Finally, Putin showed a willingness that he wants to negotiate a ceasefire, and at the same time Russia obviously is looking for security guarantees. Besides that, NATO confirmed the full support to Ukraine, and 20% of the Russian Black Sea fleet has been destroyed in the last 4 months alone, with the most recent attack eliminating more than 2,000 Shahed drones, which were on one big ship. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's get straight to the point and talk about some ridiculous Russian propaganda. So, today we have something actually pretty ridiculous. You already know the head of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, and you probably heard about his son, Adam Kadyrov, who is at the moment of recording this video is all of 16 years old. You already probably heard about him getting medals, awards and rewards for pretty much anything. For breathing, for saying hi to his mate in the morning, and pretty much just for existing. And so recently, several weeks ago, apparently his father Ramzan Kadyrov appointed his son Adam to become his head of his personal security. And Adam Kadyrov, he probably was thinking that this is some kind of a cool title from the Western movies, which are probably sanctioned in Russia anyways. He decided to look like an actual bodyguard from the Western thrillers, wearing sunglasses, taking the suitcase in the suit, and looking extremely dangerous, as you can see from this video. And guys, as always, question to you. If you would like Adam Kadyrov to be the head of your personal security, just let us know this in the comments. For this reason, I obviously do not expect more than 5 of you. And in this case, if you do not want to trust your life to a 16-year-old who looks like a Terminator, simply like this video and subscribe to my channel, because you will have the protection of the Russian dude army. You can also follow me on Instagram, the new year is here, and I will be watching and trying to translate the address of Putin to the nation. The link to my Instagram is down below. And so yes, now it's time to get serious. Let's talk about some very huge events in the south, which led to more than 20% of the Russian Black Sea fleet being destroyed. And then I'm gonna give you a very quick update from the east, where unfortunately we do have a couple of bad news. And finally, we'll talk about Putin showing us pretty obvious hints that he wants a ceasefire. And first of all, according to this article from Ground News, a pretty big landing ship in Feodosia, Crimea, has been quote-unquote heavily damaged, but in fact it was destroyed. You probably already heard about this, but I will give you even more details. And so yes, once again, this happened in Crimean Peninsula in the small sea town called Feodosia, and the ship we're talking about, which has been destroyed, is allegedly the 3rd biggest landing ship of the Russian Black Sea Navy and is called Novocherkassk. And long story short, this last night Ukrainian Air Force were able to destroy it with the help of the cruise missiles. At first, Russians as always mentioned that this was just a minor damages, and in fact these all loud noises and some spontaneous ignition in the open field, this was just the work of the Russian air defense. And they even made several articles about it, but in the morning we were able to see this picture, where there was pretty much nothing left from this ship, so Russians could no longer push their propaganda. And later on, Ukrainians themselves also confirmed the destruction of this ship, in addition to 13 Shahed drones. But wait, there is more. In fact, the very big boom of this vessel was pretty much very big. Long story short, to say the least, and trying to be using words which are so-called acceptable by YouTube. Because reportedly this ship was transporting at least 2,000 more Iranian Shahed drones, which obviously all of them got destroyed as well. And another indirect confirmation of this is that the remains, the parts of this ship, were pretty much scattered across entire Feodosia. And even though it might feel like that Ukrainians are not destroying that many Russian sea vessels, in fact the number is very huge, because Russians simply do not have thousands of them, and even the destruction of one is a significant event. Such as, for example, according to the British intelligence, in the last 4 months alone, approximately 20% of the Russian Black Sea fleet became Russian Black Sea submarines. And the most recent landing ship, called Novcherkassk, is among the biggest ones. And at this very moment, according to already Ukrainian Navy, there is not a single missile carrier or military ship of Russians located in the Black Sea or in Azov Sea. And now to the most interesting part: how does different media present this story? And I'm mainly talking about the left, center and right media differences in the headlines. And I can easily do it on the Ground News website. Just take a look for yourself. For example, the left media says that Ukraine destroys one of Russia's biggest amphibious warships in Crimea. The center media says Ukraine attacks Russian landing ship in Crimean port. And now the right media: Ukraine attacks the heart of the Russian fleet in Crimea and manages to sink one of the largest ships. Ground News even goes ahead and uses the artificial intelligence to compare the news bias for you. So right here you will be able to see the summary of how left, center and right media covers once again the very same story. And it is achieved by pulling articles from different sources, such as, for example, in our case, it is the whole 276 of them. You can then also see the bias distribution we talked about previously, and in our case it is pretty much covered equally by left, center and right, being 35, 35 and 30% respectively. As you scroll down, you'll see the factuality of these articles, and 57% of them are of a high factuality, meaning that the majority of the sources are trustworthy. Ground News even shows the Russian state media, such as, for example, TASS in our case, and you can see Ukrainian attack on Feodosia in Crimea kills one and damages amphibious landing ship. Exactly what we've been talking about a couple of minutes ago. Not destroyed, but so-called damaged. And in my opinion, having articles from all the available sources is extremely important, so that you can see how Russians present their own side of the very same story to the media. Which is crucial in our modern time, because many social media companies and news aggregators, they simply remove Russian sources from their platforms, leaving us in the dark about their motives. And if you value the trustworthiness of the place where you read your daily news, and if you simply want to be just like me, please subscribe to the Ground News using my link, ground.news/RussianDude. And right now they have a very special and a very limited time offer, where you can subscribe for less than $1 or get 40% off for the unlimited access. I highly encourage every single one of you to take advantage of this incredible offer, and once again you can do it by simply using my link down below, ground.news/RussianDude. And as always, this is simply a massive support for the channel, so thank you so much Ground News for your support. And now let's get back to the program. And so yes, what do you think was the response by Russians? Unfortunately, it is something what they usually do. There was an attack against the train station in Kherson, and unfortunately a policeman who was helping the civilians to evacuate, he was eliminated. And I mean, just think about it. Ukrainians targeted one of the biggest Russian landing ships, obviously a military target. In response to that, Russians attacked a train station with hundreds of civilians. Not a single tank, infantry fighting vehicle, submarine, helicopter, nothing like this was on the train station, only civilians. Speaking about the trains in Crimea, as you can see from this another video, Russians started to bring even more military vehicles using the rail tracks through the Crimean Peninsula, which just once again confirms the importance of Crimea as a military target for Ukrainians, because Russians simply use it to bring a lot of resupplies and reinforcements. And besides that, in Russian city Yeisk, which is already on the territory of Russia, recently last night some very loud noises have been reported by locals, as you can see from this video. And so yes, Now guys, as promised, let's briefly talk about the situation in the east of the country, where unfortunately there are a couple of bad news, and then we'll finally talk about Putin hinting us that he wants a ceasefire. And first of all, from the eastern front lines, somewhere most likely close to Bakhmut, we have this video where a single Ukrainian drone was able to stop the advancement of the entire Russian tank T-90M called Prorыв, along with its soldiers, who, when they saw the drone approaching, they abandoned the tank in the open and the middle field and started to run away. And speaking about Bakhmut itself, right here is the video from the Ukrainian army, which shows a compilation of the grenade dropping footage from this city, and Ukrainians, as you will be able to see, are able to effectively eliminate Russians who are hiding inside the trenches. The entire video is of a very high quality, so you will be able to see the consequences of such attacks, and once again it shows the confirmation of the dominance of the drone usage in the modern warfare. And just as always, the full and uncensored version of this compilation you will be able to find on my Patreon. The link is down below, and if you decide to subscribe, there is 1 week of free access for every single one of you to try it. And you know what? A lot of such attacks are obviously will not be possible without proper reconnaissance. And Ukrainians are very dominant in this case as well. They're no longer relying so much on the Western equipment in this case, because they have their very own reconnaissance drone called Shark, as you are able to see in those pictures. But yes, in order to perform the actual attacks themselves, in addition to using the grenades and drones like you were able to see in the previous video, sometimes Ukrainians do rely on the Western military equipment, such as for example this self-propelled artillery system from Sweden called Archer. But unfortunately, as we all know, the value of human life in Russian army is pretty much close to zero. That is why their officers, they still force Russian infantry to advance, despite heavy losses. And as a result of this, Russians were able to capture some land to the south of Avdiivka, as you can see from this map, and then they were also able to advance closer to the highway to the east of Ivanovo, also confirmed by this map. As we get closer now to Avdiivka, another hot spot in the east of Ukraine, Ukrainians were also able to destroy a pretty big assault group of Russians located in Krasnohorivka. And then in Avdiivka itself, right here is the footage of Ukrainians using American infantry fighting vehicle called Bradley against the positions of Russians. And believe it or not, we do have one more video from Avdiivka where a Russian infantry fighting vehicle called Terminator is being ironically terminated by Ukrainian drones. Several of them, costing less than $1,000 each, were able to destroy a extremely expensive, to say the least, Russian military machine. But unfortunately, as of right now, the situation in Avdiivka is extremely unstable. Ukrainians are doing everything possible to defend it, but because of same meat assaults that Russians are sending every single day, it is not impossible for them not to advance, which they pretty much do. And according to the commander-in-chief of Ukrainian forces, Valery Zaluzhny, he gives approximately 2 to 3 months before Avdiivka falls into the hands of Russians, unless there is an extreme support from the US. And potentially it might experience the same destiny as another city from the east called Marinka, which, as you already know, Russians completely destroyed to the ground. As you can see from this video, there is almost nothing left from this city. But Russians did not stop. They continued to attack even next Ukrainian cities to the west of Marinka, such as for example this one called Novomikhailivka. And as you can see, another city is about to be fully destroyed by Russians. They are using heavy shells with the very destructive force. And you can see it is already getting very close, unfortunately, to the condition of Marinka. And so, as you can see, as a result of all this, unfortunately both countries, including Russia, they do have temporarily success along the eastern front lines, but it is Ukraine which are achieving more major breakthroughs, such as for example with the destruction of another major ship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. And both Russia and Ukraine, they do understand that the situation along the front lines right now is pretty much stationary. Neither of the countries is advancing significantly. For this reason, Putin started to hint us that he wants to negotiate a ceasefire. If you've been watching my channel for quite some time, you already know that in the past it was first small local authorities who were talking about the ceasefire negotiations. And then it was some high-ranking officials, such as for example the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov, and it all ended with the Minister of Defense of Russia, Sergei Shoigu himself, who also talked about the necessity to cease fire and to negotiate. And well, now we arrived to the final destination. It is now Putin, who yet is indirectly, but he is hinting himself that yes, probably it will be a good time to stop the combat activities. And long story short, since September, according to many Western sources which have been summarized in this article, Putin has been hinting once again about the ceasefire. He did not do it directly, he did not say it himself, because in this way it will show his weakness according to his mindset. So he was using various diplomatic channels to deliver his statements. And one of the most common statements that you heard several times is that Russia does want to negotiate, but it is Ukrainians who do not want to do it. Russia will always be ready to finish if needed. But yeah, we will not cancel our special military operation goals. Everything will be achieved and we will not surrender any meter of Ukrainian land. That's the official position of Kremlin. So in the end, Putin wants to present this kind of picture. I will not give up on the special military operation. All this land is already liberated by Russia. We're not giving it back to Ukraine. But hey, Sergei Lavrov, Shoigu, just talk about the ceasefire, because we're kinda right now in the relatively good position. We kinda achieved a little bit more than I would expect. So I think it will be good to freeze the conflict where it is right now. And another thing which he is not mentioning is that he does know that in case NATO and the US and other major allies of Ukraine, in case they increase the support to Ukraine, then Russia will definitely have a very big problem. And from moving forward, the only thing that can happen, it is exactly that. That US might increase the support, NATO might help more Ukrainians. So pretty much yes, it is relatively understandable that Putin wants to have a ceasefire right now, because right now Russia is in a relatively okay condition, at least in his understanding. Because anything that can Ukraine receive in the near future, this will only make the position of Russians even worse. And especially as it was mentioned previously by many representatives of the European Union and NATO and obviously America, they will never stop supporting Ukraine. Once again, they pledged the full support to this country. Such as, for example, to say the least, besides sending military support and assistance to Ukraine, US and European Union might also open several factories on the territory of Ukraine to help produce them military equipment and vehicles, which will first of all significantly reduce the logistics time. And besides that, there are even several assumptions online that the US might persuade Russia to negotiate with Ukraine on predominantly Ukrainian terms. But the main question here is the ceasefire actually a good or a bad thing for Ukraine? Well, first of all, the good thing is obviously that the hostilities will stop, and hopefully it stays the same after Ukraine will be able to return all of its territories, including Crimea. But the bad thing here is that, unfortunately, you can never trust Putin, and most likely even if there is a ceasefire, he will take this time to reset the Russian army, to restore its power, to resupply itself, and then once again launch another attacks against Ukraine and capture even more land. And so, unfortunately, as of right now, the only possible solution which does not play in favor of Putin is unfortunately to keep everything as it is, and also, at the same time, increase the military support to Ukraine. They need to finish Putin. They cannot let him regain his power, and they simply cannot longer believe his words and his statements. As we all seen from the past, pretty much none of them come true. Please guys, let me know in the comments if anything I just said makes sense to you. Also, if you do not mind and if you do like this style of daily news updates, can you please simply subscribe to my channel. Also, once again, I want to say and thank Ground News for sponsoring this video, and also every single Patreon for support that you provide for my channel. And then see you tomorrow.